and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts,
Archlector George,
and Harrison, the Depths is Historical.
We continue our coverage of The Heroes, Joe's second standalone, and the next First Law entry. We cover silence, ambition, and give and take. So, let's get started. As usual, gotta thank you all.
Yes, we love you.
Continued
We love you
support
all.
in spite of our ban. Thank you so much for being loyal supporters. I believe at this point we showed you guys the rap song, right?
Sorry, but you have to admit, it's pretty fucking stupid.
And great.
And fantastic.
It's fantastic, yeah.
And great.
Fantastically stupid.
Love it. Love it so much. And
and at the end of the series, we'll need your guys' blood for the sacrifice to the dark gods. But
yeah.
That's much later.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, that's for our impending takeover of Reddit. So
we're gonna pull a Archlector Salt, and we're gonna kind of do it the trailer park way of summoning a devil rather than trying to do it the other way.
Yeah, figure the Appalachians, they got it right, you know.
Summon a Wendigo.
Oh yeah, so just continue to follow us on our social media pages and our YouTubes. I'm done traveling for work, so I'll have more time. I only just got back a couple of days ago, so I'm still recuperating, but things should be on the up and up in terms of our social media presence, our YouTubes, right, Georgie? Me and you, and all that. So. Yeah.
The older my son gets, the easier it will be to do other things.
You say that now. Oh man. But so let's go on and we'll start with our first chapter read through, which is Silence. And this one, since we start off with our boy Bremer Dan Gorst.
Who did it last time?
It's George.
Oh God.
Yep. Come on.
No,
you know the deal. We start off with the letter. So go ahead, Georgie.
Your August Majesty, Lord Byas, the first of the Magi, has conveyed to Marshal Croy your urgent desire that the campaign be brought to a swift conclusion. The Marshal has therefore devised a plan to bring Black Dow to a decisive battle with all dispatch, and the entire army hums with gainful activity.
I only got a third of the way through.
It's my bad. I'm sorry. It's my bad. It's so hard not to. You're doing a great job.
General Jallenholm's division leads the way, marching from first light to last, with the vanguard of General Mitterix but a few hours behind. One could almost say there is a friendly rivalry between the two.
It's just how ridiculous the lies are as well.
To be first to grapple with the enemy. Lord Good Governor Meade, meanwhile, has been recalled from Olensand. The three divisions will converge near a town called Osrung. Then, united, drive north towards Carliard itself and a victory. I accompanied General Jallenholm's staff at the very spear point of the army. We are somewhat hampered by the poor roads and changeable weather, which switches with very little warning from sunshine to sharp downpours. The general is not a man to be stopped, however, either by the actions of the skies or the enemy. If we do come into contact with the Northmen, I will, of course, observe and immediately inform your Majesty of the outcome. I remain your Majesty's both faithful and unworthy servant, Bremer Dan Gorst, while observing the Northern War.
that last part where he just kind of blew right through it. You couldn't take it anymore, man.
That was perfect.
Thank you so much for that, George. Thank you. And so basically, you barely could have called it dawn at the time. I guess Bremer Dan Gorst had finished his letter and sent it to the little messenger guy to gave it to him. And so basically, what he has been doing at this point is he's been training. He had been running for the best part of an hour. in full gear. And when I say gear, I mean full armor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like how he points out. He's like, I'm not quite going full armor, so I'll just have the dueling, the dueling armor.
Right. He's not full armor. It just so yeah, like you said, just the dueling armor, right? Just the parts
But
where
he's
like
got his parrying arms fully armored, but his left isn't, so that he doesn't, or his right isn't, so that he doesn't have to. This looks more like what you would have for dueling than you would for
gotcha.
being in a real fight. Almost looks like a gladiator in my head.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That makes sense. Okay. And so as he's running around through the camp before they're about to get on the move, and then he gets back to his tent or whatever you would say, and he has servants. And this is the first time we meet his servants. They are Rurgen and Younger, and they're waiting for him. One of them brings him a bucket, drinks the water, and Younger brings the case, and he takes out his practice blades. And these are great blunt lengths of battered metal, their pommels big as half bricks to lend some semblance of balance, 3 times the weight of his battle steels, which were already of a particularly heavy design. So this guy is, you train harder so that the fight is easier. That kind of thing.
It's pretty hardcore. I mean, like we don't see anybody else in the series, and honestly, let's be real here. You don't see very many people train like this unless you're an Olympic athlete. Like this isn't like a normal set of skills to be training either. So it's kind of cool. Also, he has his servant, which is the first time we see that like the nobility of Midderland has servants. It makes logical sense, but we haven't really seen that other than with Giselle as king.
Yeah, true. I mean, the most we saw was what maids with Artie and Glocta and Barnum. Can't forget Barnum.
But you're right, Harrison. You really do get the sense that these guys are just here to, do whatever cost wants them to do, really.
Yep. And basically they're now gonna spar. And Rogan has the shield and stick, and Younger has a pole. And obviously they're quicker. They have lighter weapons, so it's definitely a task for Gorst to overcome them. And the reason he didn't want any chances to go soft, and the reason because of that was because of what happened in Sapani, city of shadows, city of prostitutes. I don't know.
City of failure.
City of failure. City of broken dreams. So every morning for the last 4 years, every morning since Sapani, which I saw this part and another part that we need to talk about. What was our timeline that we said?
Sapani happened like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Says 4.
Or was it 4 years ago?
Okay. 4 years.
He says 4 years, and then later on, somebody else says 7 winters, and since 3 trees died.
We might have just confused the fact that these people might not have the same calendar.
Very true. They might not be running on the calendar that we have.
Well, it's still pretty close, though. I mean, like
it is. I'm just a stickler.
Like Baez says, "Hey, when was the last time that all this shit went down? When did Giselle win the pitching contest?" And
he said 9 years.
8 years.
I think he said 8 or 9.
No, he knows exactly how long it's been.
Yeah.
So he says 8 years, and then if Sapani happened 4 years ago, that matches up because the end of the last Argument of Kings takes place about a year after the fencing contest, which means that by the time Best or Cold happens, that was 3 years before
9. Yeah, 9.
Yeah. It still matches up, is what I'm trying to say.
It does. I'm just
You're doing a good job, Joe. Keep up the good work. Keep the timeline correct. Otherwise, we will come after you. We're watching you.
Considering that Joe himself has said, I don't fucking keep track of timelines. Oh, man. So, yeah, he basically is putting himself through this so he doesn't ever basically get caught off guard again. He's never he won't consider himself as weak. He said that at the time of Sapani, he he allowed himself to grow soft, and so that's the point of all this. And so, after the training, they get ready and stuff. And now he's looking at the troopers of the King's Own 1st Regiment getting out of their tents, in the chilly dawn. And they're getting ready to, I guess, start to, to move out. And Gorst looks for his battle steels, and I guess just to admire them and to get ready and whatnot. And apparently, they've been made by Calvez, the greatest swordsmith of Styria. So another another token of another memory or whatever from Styria. He has Sapani and he has swords. Look at that.
The same maker that made
Monza's
sword, right?
Yeah.
Well, Bena sword, you mean?
Oh yeah.
Bena the bitch. So these were the gifts from Giselle for saving his life at the Battle of Adua.
Which, by the way, is that's sweet as fuck. Giselle is like, we don't really. I mean, this isn't really a spoiler. We don't really get to see them like interact with each other, again, ever since that time. But there's all these little things that happen between them where, yes, it's more in here, of course, but he bought him those swords and stuff, and we'll see how the book goes. Obviously, Gorst thinks that Giselle doesn't like him. In our view, we think that Gorst doesn't like Giselle, but he does like Giselle because he's the only person who's ever beat him in battle in his mind, even though he doesn't know that he was cheated. They got cheated. So it's interesting to see how their dynamic is. So it's really sweet that Giselle got him these swords. Like, obviously, Giselle did that just because.
Yeah. And Vergen and Younger. Jesus,
Vergen and
Younger. To be honest, knowing this book, I would not be surprised if they were called that.
Yeah.
Jürgen and Vergen.
Maybe they're of German disposition or something. I don't fucking know. They're showing him the steels because, I guess they were scrubbing and polishing and sharpening them, blah, blah, blah. And then, so, near the end, Vergen goes, well, just to let you know that General Jallenhorn has asked that you join him at the head of the column as soon as the division begins to march. And Younger's like, only 6 miles from Mosrung, sir. Do you think there'll be a battle today? And Gorst, being the...
I hope not.
Yeah, being the proper guy, says, I hope not. I hope not. But internally, internally, he really is praying for one. He says, I beg you for this one thing. He's talking to the Fates. Send me a battle. And he's not really. He's got to do a little bit more observing, less hoping. Right.
It's interesting that even with his closest servants, he's not honest with them. Like, he sees these guys every day. We see that he does somewhat to as much as somebody like Gorst can care about them. And he.
Are you calling him a sociopath?
Yes.
You saying he can't care?
Yes, I am.
Rude. Well, yeah, he hopes for a battle, and that's where the chapter ends. It's a very brief introductory chapter here. Not introductory, but, very brief one. So, boys, what do you rate that?
I'm just going to give it a 3. It's good to see, we've always heard about Gorst's famous training regime, right from, I think it was the first chapter that where Giselle's being trained by Varus, like he's mentioned, like, oh yeah, Gorst runs 10 miles a day in full armor and all that. And it's easy to think that maybe that's just a little bit of propaganda, but in fact it is true that he does this every single fucking day.
It's pretty admirable, but it's also it's not coming from a great place.
No, absolutely not. So I'm just going to give that one a 3, yeah.
Jeff, what do you think?
I'm going to give it a 2. I'm going to give it a 2. Very, very, very short chapter. Not much happened. We just see a Gorst training. And it seems like this is going to be the start of something. This is something we should point out, and I didn't point out, and I'm going to do it now. Oh, wait, did you give your chapter score? Give your chapter score right now.
I'm also going to give it a 2 out of 9. It's not like it's a pointless thing to have, moment chapter to have. But it's also, like you said, it's short, and there's not too much other than just confirming what we already know. So,
yeah. And the reason I guess for that is because from when we left off the previous chapter to now, there's a change in the book a little bit, and so this part is called Day 1, and so this is gonna be Day 1 of the battle, we can presume. And there's a map actually. Joe normally doesn't do maps, but here he does, and he does them. I like this pretty well. It's a very focused map of the area of where the battle's gonna be, and so we see where the lines are drawn up for this day. At least what's going to be the lines. On the north side, to the west, we see Scales. I guess you would say his division, his group, his men. Then it's 10 ways. Still a bit, a little bit more east of Scale. Then Dow and Ironhead are in the center. Then we have Golden going east, Ricci further east at the end of the line. And then on the Unions, we see Jallenhorn is basically on their respective side. They're west in Adween, the Old Bridge, Stoll Farm, a little bit of a group of people far west or north of Lockfell, and then obviously Wetterland is in the Heroes, and then Ostrung is full of men there too. So that's how the lines are drawn for today. Wonder what's gonna happen. What's gonna happen? But yeah, so that's the end of that chapter. I wanted to just give you guys like a brief overview if you're a first time reader to Heroes and you're reading along with us or ahead of us, most likely. But yeah, all right. So now we'll move on to our next segment, which is Best Meme of the Week. Georgie boy, that's a you. Take it away.
So this was I'm with Burings has cross-posted this to the House of the Meme Maker, and he says this is Sephiroth and Frost, and it's a serval cat and a very fat Norwegian forest cat. And me and Harrison were talking about this before we started recording here, but it's the old trope of you have to have a tall and skinny and a short and fat one, and also going to say this about Deep and Shallow as well, not necessarily with the way they look, but the way they behave. They look like that to me as well. So yeah, thanks I'm with Burings for sharing that with us.
And who was the cat and who was the the Norwegian fat cat and the other one?
Sephiroth was obviously the tall cat.
Sephiroth's the tall and skinny one, and Frost is the short and fat one. No, he's not.
Practicals. Remember that, folks. We're talking about the practicals. Sephiroth and Frost are babies from the first trilogy.
Our sweet boys.
Terribly.
They're ex-practicals now, really.
Dead practicals, actually.
Yeah, dead. Frost's sewing empire has come crashing down. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Who made that meme again?
It was just somebody on a different. Yeah, it was just on like a main page Reddit one. But I'm with Burings, who's been Burrings has been one of our meme of the weeks before as well, I think.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for that, good sir. Thank you.
Well, yes, welcome, meme god number 57.
Love that. So, we start off this next chapter, which is ambition. And we start off from the perspective of a new person, a character we haven't seen before just yet. Well, we've seen them. We haven't been them yet. And
we haven't been inside of them yet, Jeff. That's the proper term.
Well, now we are. And this is Finri.
It's a woman. Damn it.
No. Well, we can't be inside. That's a violation of some kind of thing. Yeah, right enough.
I forgot it was Finri. Now I feel gross. I preferred if it was a man.
Jeez. So it's Finri Dan Brock, right? And she's in bed with her husband Hal. And he's like, Finn, I love you. And she's like, And apparently, she did love him, even though if she found it hard to say the words somehow.
Sounds like she's trying to talk herself into it. She's like, yeah, no, this is great. This is fine. And she's just like, yeah.
She's like, I'm settling, but, it's fine, I guess. That's what she's like.
Because she says that he looks magnificent in uniform and even better without one. He makes her laugh. and there was definite fire when they kissed. He's honorable, generous, diligent, respectful, good smelling. That's an interesting one. She said, no towering intellect, true, but that was probably just as well. There's rarely room for two of those in one marriage. And then she goes, good boy. And she pats him on the cheek after he tells her he loves her. Yeah. And she goes, she had great affection for him and only occasionally a little contempt, which is better than she could say for most men. It's like, okay. They were well matched, optimist and pessimist, idealist and pragmatist, dreamer and cynic, not to mention his noble blood and her burning ambition. Okay. All right, we're getting a sense of her. And then he kind of jokes that like he swears that every man in the army loves her, but she points out probably except for Lord Governor Meade. And he goes, well, if you stop making him look like a moron, he'd probably warm to you. And she goes, well, only if he would do it to himself, then I would stop.
Oh, savage.
Damn. And then she jokes around with him, and she goes, anyway, there's only one officer whose opinion I give a damn about anyway. And he goes, oh yeah, who'd that be? And then she goes, Captain Hardrick. Man, there's those tight cavalry trousers. I like to drop things, so he'll pick them up for me. Oopsies.
I like that. That's a reverse of a trope as well. And it's always in films where the woman bends down to pick something up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it's Captain Hardrick this time. That's quite clever.
Yeah.
And also, Hardrick is like one of those names you're like, Captain Hardrick. You're like,
Hardrick?
He led the charge. Instead, he's slain 10 million men. Like he's got one of those. He's got one of those names.
And then so Finnery's obviously laughing, and Hal is like, I don't think Hardrick would suit you at all, though. The man's dull as a plank. You'd be bored in minutes. And she goes, yeah, you're probably right. And a good ass only goes so far. Maybe. And then she's taken for the most ridiculous lover. And then she smiles as she picks the perfect candidate. And then she says, Bramerdan Gorst, then. Can't really say he's got the looks or the wit or the standing, but I've got a feeling there's a deep well of emotion beneath that lumpen exterior.
If only you knew.
The voice would take some getting used to, of course, but one could coax out more than two words together. But if you like the strong and silent type, I say he scores stupendously high on both counts. What? She looks at Hal. He's not smiling. She goes, I'm joking. I've known him for years. He's harmless. And he goes, harmless? Have you ever seen him fight? And she goes, I've seen him fence, of course. He goes, no, not the same. And then she goes, wait a minute. There's something in the way he was holding back that made her want to know more. She goes, well, have you seen him fight? He goes, yeah. And she goes, okay, and all he says is, I'm glad he's on our side.
It's interesting. I wonder if Hal is like more concerned, not just because he's obviously a little bit insecure about their dynamic and their relationship, but more because he's like, no, I don't want you around him because he's dangerous, not just because he's jealous.
Yeah. And then she goes, oh, my poor baby, are you scared of him? And then he then I guess he rolls away from her a little bit, and he goes, yeah, everyone should be at least a little scared of Bramerdan Gorst. And that surprised her because she didn't think Hal was really afraid of anything. And so they laid there for a moment, and now she felt guilty. And it's, internally she says she did love Hal. She had marked down all the points that he proposed. He's pros and cons and all that stuff. And he was a good man, one of the best. Excellent teeth, honest, brave, loyal to a fault. And those things are not always enough. That's why he needed someone more practical to steer him through the rapids. That's why he needed her. That's what her rationale is. And then she goes, Hal? And he goes, yes. And then she goes, I love you. and then he goes, good girl. That's so funny. And then anyway, she goes, what is love anyway but finding someone who suits you, someone who makes up for your shortcomings, someone you could work with and work on. And so there's a bit of a break. And now,
other than that last tiny line, she's right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people do think like that. Some people do think like that.
I know. But what I'm saying is like She's almost got it right. If your thoughts are, yeah, it's about compatibility and compromise and me making them better, like me. I think there's a disconnect.
Them to my will.
Yeah. Yes. It's great that he's in this position because then I can become more powerful. But no, Finry does have a I think that it's her logical process is spot on, and how most people it's like a goal, right? Like her breakdown of pros and cons and compatibility, like it's really smart. It's how it should be.
And Finry is a very well written character, a lot of depth, complicated. You'll see, but Finry, she's great. So there's a bit of a break, and then apparently she's now with Alice Dan Brent. Brent is an interesting name. Don't we know somebody named Brent?
No, it cannot be. Brent, like Giselle's friend? Like Jallenhorm's friend?
Oh, snaps.
Bringing it back.
Hey, man, Giselle, with Giselle, it's, rising tide raises all ships, baby. It brings his homies up with him.
It's definitely not because he's super lonely and feels like the only way to connect with his old past is to promote them because he can't actually talk to them due to his circumstances.
Giselle is a hero, I'll have you know. All right? He went on a journey out west, and you out here just...
Oh, I know. He saved that princess. He charged the bridge at Darmium. He led the charge, and he's definitely... and he killed, 20 eaters or something by himself with Gorse?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. That's fucked up. Anyway, so it's Finry and Alice, and I guess they're chilling somewhere. They're on their horses, and Finry, it was safe to have someone like Alice around because then she can't overshadow her because Alice is very she's clever enough and well-born enough to not be an embarrassment, but not pretty enough or clever enough to, or well-born enough to pose any threat.
I love these Finry assessments. They're kind of like the Giselle assessments whenever he's trying to figure something out.
Right.
She does this thing which I think a lot of people do, which is she boils down people to something that she can totally recognize. She can quantify, and she's not necessarily wrong, but people are more than that. She doesn't quite realize that yet.
Yeah. And we'll see how she thinks of Alice in a moment.
Also, Alice... I think it's pronounced Elise. Elise Dan Brent is how Pacey says it. I'm sorry, Jeffrey. She's got a Z in there. It's a Z. Elise.
Alice. Now I'm just going straight up. Alice, fuck you. No, I'm kidding. Elise is talking about how that marching so much is difficult. It's a weird adjustment. And Finry, she's used to it. The army's always been her home. Her mother died when she was very young, so her father, General Croy or Lord Marshal Croy, had raised her.
The little thing we didn't know about Croy. No, you can reread before they're hanged and have that in mind.
The whole time Finry was there.
Got a little daughter back in the tent,
Yep. And that she apologizes. When someone you learn, passes away or is dead. But Finry isn't sorry. She goes, "Why? My father misses her, but how can I? I never knew her." And so then Finry is like, "Eesh. Okay, so how about..." She realizes the conversation took a weird turn. So she goes, "Well, how about your parents?" And then Elise goes, "They're both dead."
Oh.
And Finry's like, yikes. So she didn't know what to say to that because now she's feeling guilt, impatience, and just seesawing back and forth. And so then I guess Elise decides to break the tension and goes "Oh, so we're heading north?" Yep. And then Finry is able to tell her all the logistics and everything. They're headed towards the town of Osrung to rendezvous the other two divisions under Generals Jallenhorm and Mitterick. So they might be 10 miles from us now on the other side of those hills. And then so Elise asks her, what kind of men are they? And so Finry is like, how do I be tactful about this? General Jallenhorm is a brave and honest man, an old friend of the king. And internally she goes, and promoted far beyond his limited ability as a result. And then she goes, Miderick is a competent and experienced soldier. And internally, she goes, as well as a disobedient blowhard with his eyes firmly on her father's position.
And if only Miderick knew.
Yeah, and so she asks him, and each commanding as many men as our own Lord Governor Meade. And so she tells Elise that they have 7 regiments apiece, 2 of cavalry and 5 of foot. And she can go off even like deeper into number and detail. But she she said that Elise was looking as if she was reaching the limits of comprehension as it was. And she was going to make a friend of her, so she wasn't going to make her feel stupid. Because her husband, Colonel Brent, was said to be close to the king himself, which now he's a very useful man to know. That's why she always made a point of laughing at his tiresome jokes.
That's so sad. It's funny too because Brent was known as like inside of the old group with Giselle and West as like the least the least liked funny one, you know.
Yeah, and at least she's being empathetic here. She goes like so many people. It must, your father must carry a great responsibility. Like he must feel it. And Finnery does acknowledge this. She said, she notes that the last time she'd seen him, she was shocked at how worn down he'd seemed. That she always thought of him as like cast in iron, but then realizing he might be soft in the middle was very disconcerting. And then she goes in her interior monologue or whatever. She says, perhaps that was the moment you grew up when you learned your parents were just as fallible as everyone else. Like, rude, bitch. The man's leading an army. All right, leave him alone.
Well, I don't know. I think this line is really good. I think it's it depends on your parents, of course, and how you gear up, but I would say it's not inaccurate. I would say to a certain degree.
I agree. I'm not saying that she's technically wrong. I'm just saying the man is leading an army.
Give a man a
break. Give a guy a break. Jeez. Ha! Women. No, I'm kidding.
But you never give your parents a break, though, right? Like it's hard to give your parents a break because you're like, not only because you think of them as infallible because it's just by nature of growing up, but also you have less grace with them because you know everything about them for the most part, and so to see them do something whenever they could do more or be better really bothers you because you're like, what the fuck? I know you're more than this, right? You have to
right. But it's, I guess in this case, it's not about assessing if he could do better. It's assessing that he seems to not be as tough.
And that's but she doesn't realize the kind of pressure he's actually underneath. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so then Elise asks her about what about the other side, the soldiers of the North, and she's like, well, the line between soldier and citizen is not necessarily a sharp line in the North. They have a few thousand Carls, professional fighters with their own weapons and armor and all that stuff. They've been bred for a life of warfare. But for each Carl, there will be several thralls, farmers, tradesmen pressed or paid to fight, usually lightly armed with spear or bow, but a lot of times, hardened warriors themselves. Then she talks about the named men, veterans who have won a celebrated place through deeds on the battlefield, and they serve as officers, bodyguards, or scouts in small groups like called dozens, like them. And she points out to some of Dogman's men. And she's not sure anyone knows how many people Blacked Out has altogether. Maybe not even Blacked Out knows. And then and Elise is like, you're so knowledgeable. And Finnery very much wanted to say, yes, I am. But she just, carelessly shrugged. And then Elise goes, war is terrible, isn't it? And Finnery goes, yeah, it ruins the landscape, throttles commerce and industry, blah, 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 blah. But then she didn't mention the one thing at the end is that it does offer enormous opportunities. And then they know, I guess, as they're marching, they're, riding through in the column and everything, a lot of refugees, right? Northern refugees, I guess you could say. Because Elise is commenting on all these people that are losing their homes, losing everything, and they're mostly women, some old men, some children. They did, and they looked emotionless. They didn't have anything, right? Finry wasn't sure exactly who they were running from or where they were going. But she is noticing there's a shitload of refugees, and Elise is like, "Oh, something should be done." And for some reason, Finry takes this opportunity here. She goes, "You're right," and then she, rides up to where the officers are chilling, and they're talking about all kinds of things, supply, morale, timing, weather, rates of march, blah 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 blah. And she knows she's talking to herself about how she knows so much more about the stuff more than Lord Governor Meade, who until last year had never presided over anything more dangerous than a formal banquet. So
Ouch.
we can see
her resentment towards him because she doesn't think he should be leading.
Right. And so he's tailored up, riding under the standard, bearing the crossed hammers of England. And so she knows that he had lost his 3 nephews years ago at the Battle of Blackwell, and his brother, the previous Lord Governor, not long after. He had nursed an insurmountable hatred for Northmen ever since, and had been such a keen advocate of war that he had outfitted half his division at his own expense. But she does note that hatred of the enemy was no qualification for command, however, quite the reverse. And there is some truth to that because you could get blinded by your hate to a lot of things.
I do like this dynamic that she points out though of Governor Meade. Like we did see like how the Battle of Blackwell, like the his nephews got all murdered, along with most of the army of England, and I like that there is development there. Like he's not just dropped the Medes entirely. Like they're back and they're still in charge of England, and now because of what happened in the last war, now he's kind of a spiteful, short-sighted, angry man. Just because, but not even unjustly, just probably not pointed, not very reasonably, I guess is the right way.
And I like so Finry, she rides up and Meade is like, "Lady Brock, how wonderful that you could join us." And then Finry just goes, "I was simply, taking part in the events, and you all just got in my way." And all the officers are like chuckling, and then Hal, but he's chuckling kindly. He's kind of like,
"What are you doing, wife? What are you doing?"
And then she goes, so like me and some of the other ladies noticed the refugees on our left, and we were hoping that maybe you could be prevailed upon to spare them some food." And then me looks at them. He goes, "I'm afraid the welfare of my soldiers must come first." And she pushes on, right? She goes, "Surely these strapping fellows can afford to miss a meal in a good cause. I'm sorry." And she like thumps Colonel Brent's breastplate, and he gave a nervous laugh. And then she goes,
I love that so much. Like Brent's like, ha ha ha.
And I like how Meade is like, "I've assured Marshal Croy that we will be in position outside Ostrog by midnight. We cannot stop." And then she's, continuing to push. She goes, "It could be done in whatever." And then he's like, he turns away rudely from her. And he goes, "Ladies and their charitable projects." And everyone's like, "Ho, ho, 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 ho."
Oh, yeah, stupid women.
And then so she goes, "Men, and they're playing at war." And she slaps Captain Hardrick on the shoulder enough to make him wince. "What silly, womanly nonsense to try to save a life or two. Now I see it. We should be letting them drop like flies by the roadside, spreading fire and pestilence wherever possible, and leaving their country a blasted wasteland. That will teach them the proper respect for the Union and its ways. I am sure there's soldiering." And she's just like looking at all the officers, eyebrows raised, and they're all just, now they're not laughing. They're like,
I like it's so cool because like even though she's not saying it for she's saying it for like self-ambition, right? Like she saw an opportunity to go up there and make a point and things like that. She's not doing it for the refugees. It's still a pretty good point, and she says it excellently. She makes all of them shut right up. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then Meade is essentially, he's like, "Colonel Brock, I think your wife might be more comfortable riding with the other ladies." and Hal's like, I was about to suggest it anyway, and he pulls her away, and then he goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" And then she goes, "The man's
babe, you can't do that."
And then she goes, "The man's a callous idiot, a farmer playing at soldiers." And Hal is just like, "We have to work with what we have. Do not bait him, please, for me. My bloody nerves won't stand it." And now she's sorry. She impatience to guilt again. And she, guilt for Hal because he had to be twice as good, twice as brave, and twice as hardworking as anyone else, simply just to get away from his father's shadow. And she says, "But I hate to see things done badly on account of some old fool's pride when they could just as be easily done as well, right?" And he goes, "Did you ever consider that it's bad enough having an amateur general without having one who's a bloody laughingstock beside? Maybe with some support he'd do better." She goes, "Maybe," unconvinced. And he goes, "Can't you just stay with the other wives, please, just for now?" And she goes, "That prattling coven. All they talk about is who's barren, who's unfaithful, and what the queen's wearing. They're idiots." And he goes, "Well, have you ever noticed that everyone's an idiot besides you?" And she goes,
he does know her well, doesn't she?
and then she goes, "You see it too?" And then Hal is like, "I love you. You know I do. But think about who you're actually helping. You could have fed those people if you just trodden softly. I'll talk to the quartermaster, try to arrange something." And then she goes, "Aren't you a hero?" And he goes, "I'm trying, but bloody hell, you don't make it easy. Next time for me, just talk about the weather. Something bland." And then she is like, "Shit at the weather, and me too." But she did have to admit that Hal had a point. She wasn't doing herself, or her husband, or the Union cause, or even the refugees any good by irritating Lord Governor Meade. She had to destroy him.
It's great.
That's the end of that chapter. I would rate it a 4 and a knuckle. 4 and a knuckle. I like the very in-depth introduction to Finnery firsthand, not from Gorse's perspective or anything. I like the we see that she's an ambitious woman, very, very intelligent and capable, but very proud. And I don't know about spiteful, but she definitely wants to put Lord Meade in his place. And she has a great deal of affection for Hal. Now, she says she loves him, and this is what we see from her mind's view. So we think she loves him, or at the very least, she has, like I said, great affection for him. But they have a good dynamic, it seems like, and he's able to put her, like, set her straight sometimes. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's not all about being the most cunning. It's just you could be too cunning for your own good.
Yeah.
But so I like their dynamic, but this is a really, really good introduction to Finnery. The only reason I'm giving it a 4 and a knuckle is that not a lot of plot movement has occurred here. But yeah,
I think I'm going to agree with you, Jeff. I'm going to go for just a little higher, a 5. I really like Finnery as a character. I think she's very fun to read. It's interesting to see any kind of character that isn't primarily murder focused in these books, because let's face it, 99% of them are just about that murder. I love the sort of a stereotype at this point to have somebody that's very, very clever but doesn't know how to talk to people at all.
Yeah.
So she kind of ends up falling flat on her face every single time she tries to do something, trying to look clever rather than try and do anything. This is which is a good character trait for Finnery. Yeah, but apart from that, like you say, not really much happens. What about you, Harrison?
I agree both of you guys' points there. I like their dynamic, like Jeff said. Finnery's right. They are really well balanced. I like how he is good because he actually is good, and Finnery pretends to be good for her own gain. But she also doesn't really recognize like the gravity of being, I guess, selfish, because she has grown. That's all she knows is to kind of to work her way up, and to try to make her life better, and she is thinking this is going to be better for everybody if they would just listen to me. But it's a really good introduction to Finnery. She's very dynamic. If this is like the first time we've actually gotten, other than like we have Monta and stuff, but like this is like another character that, for as women characters that starts off really, really strong with dynamic traits, and it's pretty cool to see how he's writing her in comparison to how he was writing a lot of the women before, like other than Monza basically. So I really enjoyed that as well. So I'm gonna rate it a 5 and a knuckle.
So thank you for that, boys. We'll move on to our next segment, which is our character spot. Boys, who are we shining the spotlight on today?
Spotlight searches, and it lands on Hal. Hal Dan Brock, which does not flow off the tongue very easily. Hal is we mentioned him a bit and just a minute ago, but he's definitely got the world kind of stacked against him. His dad tried to rebel against the Union and definitely got punished for it, but thanks to Giselle's mercy, he has a chance. And not only does he's not outcast, he still holds he doesn't hold his lands, but he still holds the title of Dan Brock. And that is Finnery obviously sees potential there, but it seems to me like Hal is just trying to live a life. He's trying to do right by people. He's trying to do right by himself. We unfortunately don't really get a POV of him, so we don't know how he feels about like his whole father situation. But he was fairly young when it happened, so it's kind of I definitely empathize with his position. There definitely won't be any negative consequences to Giselle sparing him. So, what do you guys think of Hal? I think he's genuinely just like a good dude. We don't actually get very many of those.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, he seems just like he's a good soldier. He knows how to talk around Finnery as well, which is great because it seems like Finnery would be a bit out of control otherwise.
What, you don't like a powerful woman, George? Mm-hmm.
In this context, anyway.
No, he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's
great
a great guy.
Great guy.
No matter what he might spawn, great guy.
Oh yeah, no matter what future shitbags he might, be procreating out here. Anyway,
but he's definitely he's a good guy. He's a good soldier. He really is just trying to do his best, and his wife is a little crazy. Obviously, he's into that, and
misogyny.
But
she's ambitious. Why does she have to be crazy?
Jeff, why are you so aggressive all the time when it comes to women?
I'm not aggressive. You're the one insulting her.
Whoa!
Called her crazy. That's what abusive men do. They just call the women crazy and move on.
You're trying to gaslight Finnery.
Yeah, you're trying to gaslight her and us. You're trying to gaslight a fictional character.
Let me balance it out. Brock's a dum-dum.
Okay.
Brock's a dum-dum. He's so you know what? Okay. You know what? We want to be hard on Hal. I'll be hard on Hal. You know those guys who went to college and they watched football and they went and got just a normal business degree and then they just got a normal business job and they're boring as fuck. And they watch football on the weekends, and that's all. That's basically their only pastime. They watch football. They're just fine. They're fine guys. They don't have any outstanding attributes. They know absolutely nothing. That's what Hal's like. Yeah, fine guy, nice guy, but he's fucking boring, totally uninteresting, and that's why Finnery wants to think that she can use him, and she's totally right because she's so much more intelligent than he is. Does that make you feel better, Jeffrey?
I find it interesting.
So you're a misandrist. You hate men. Is that...
You can't win, Harrison. I don't know what you tried. I find it interesting that like Hal should have this sort of self-hatred and self-loathing that Gorse does because of his father and being like the son of a traitor and all that. He should have all of that sort of like self-doubt.
Maybe he does.
It just ends up with Gorse instead.
No, well, first of all, we never know Hal's internal monologue. Maybe he does. We know he has to try to be twice as good, twice as hardworking, all that stuff. And I can you imagine, like, all right, Hal, and I think it was Hal has a sister. I think Lord Brock had a son and a daughter, right? At the time when he tried to, to depose Giselle. And at the time, if I'm not mistaken, Hal he was in the Union when this shit happened, and he must have been very caught off guard. And now he's surrounded by men that have, taken him into custody, and he's got to be like, he's either got to disavow his father, or he's got to be like, no, my father's the rightful king. You guys cheated him out, blah blah blah. So he did the right thing, with all the information that he has, and yeah, he's probably feeling a lot of guilt, probably feeling a lot of pressure. I mean, think about it. That's a weird place to be, and I wonder.
Or he just doesn't think about it at all because he's like empty-headed,
Could be empty-headed, but although he is intelligent enough to point out that Finree could have actually fed those refugees if she took a different tact.
Yeah, that's true. And
he knows Gorse, like, how he really is in terms of at least his fighting ability.
He is a Joe character, yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's our character spot on Hal. Do you guys want to say anything else about him?
No, we'll be seeing more from Hal later.
Oh yeah, we'll be seeing a lot more. Bing, 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 bing. And so we'll move on then to our third and final chapter read through, which is Give and Take. And we are with our boys, Kerndon Crawl and his dozen, right? And he was just woken up from a nappy nap by Wonderful, who has a scab on the side of her head, from the little skirmish they just had. And so there's not much going on, that there's no sign of Hardbread, but that they did bury Athrock. And Crawl's like, fick. And he goes, did you say the words yet? Knowing they wouldn't have, but hoping they did. Wonderful goes, nope, waiting for you. And he's like, great. And so, he limps his way over there. And they're all there in a half circle. Droft, trying to eat a whole crust of bread at once. Wirren cuddling the father of swords. Jan with a very grim face. And Craw is there with Agric and Brack. And Brack is not looking too great because the bandage on his leg is showing a fresh stain. And he goes, is that leg okay? And Brack goes, it's just a scratch. We know what, we've seen this before.
Merely a flesh wound.
We've seen this before, haven't we, folks? He goes, bleeding a lot for a scratch. And Brack is like, you call that a lot? All right, I guess not. Whatever. And so then he Crawl's just like, oh boy, here we go. He's looking around. He looks down at the crumbling wall where they piled up the bodies of Hardbread. But anyway, he's got to say the words. And he starts saying the words, and he goes, strange thing. The other day, Droft was asking me whether they call these stones the heroes because there are heroes buried here. I said no. I said not. But maybe there's one buried here now. Ugh. And he's like cringing because he's like, oh God, Jesus Christ. But, all the dozen nodded, Agrig with the tear going down his cheek. And, it notes that you could say things at a grave that would get you laughed out of a tavern and be treated like you're brimming over with wisdom. So he goes, he hadn't been with us long, Athrock, but he made his mark. It won't be forgotten. He stood with his crew, fought well, did the right thing, died badly, hacked with an axe on the ground that meant nothing. That's him talking to himself. He says, did the right thing, all you can ask of a man, I reckon. And as he continues to talk, Shivers interrupts, and he's like, Craw! And Craw's like, not now! And he's like, now. And so Craw goes over to where Shivers is, and he's like, what am I looking at? And he's like, uh-oh. Down by the river, at the foot of Black Fell, there were horsemen on the Ufrith Road, riding fast towards Ostrong. Could have been 40, could have been more. And then he points over to another spot where another couple score were coming down the other way towards the old bridge, taking the crossings, and they're getting around both sides of the heroes. And Crawl's now starting to get worried. He goes, where the fuck is Scory? And Scory is like right behind him. He goes, right here, boss. And he goes, okay. And then Droft is like, Chief. And he points even further down to the road south of Adween. And he opens his eyeglass and yep, it's the Union, and it's a lot of people. It's the army. And he's like, looks like all of them. And then Brack is like, tell me we're not fighting this time. And then Crawl goes, sometimes the right thing to do is to run like fuck. Pack up, boys. We're getting the fuck out of here. So then they all start packing up. Jan is like putting out the fire, and Weiren's like, why you even bother putting it out? And he's like, I'm not leaving them my fire. It's like, all right. Okay.
Jan always has these weird, like, he always has the weirdest hills to die on. I know that's poignant right now, but he always does. Every single time, he's always like, we can't just let them, use our weapons, like shit like
Right.
that.
Mm-hmm. And so then, as they're getting ready to, they're leaving and they're packing up and everything. Agric is like, "Is that it? That's all the words he gets?" And Crawl's like, "Oh fuck." He's like, "We can say more later, but right now there's the living that we have to think about." And so Agric is now staring at Shivers, and he goes, "Okay, so we're giving it up. He died for nothing for a fucking hill we're not even holding on to. So if we hadn't fought, he'd still be alive." And he took a step, and he might even try to go for Shivers. If Brack hadn't grabbed him from behind and everything. And Shivers is like, he goes, yeah, I hear it. And it isn't the first time. If I hadn't gone to Styria, I still have both my eyes. I went, one eye. We fought, he died. Life only rolls one way, and it ain't always the way we like. There it is. And then he just walks away. He's very pragmatic, Shivers. you can say. And then Craw tells Agric, forget about him. If you need a man to blame me. I chose to fight. So then, all right, they're all getting ready. And then Wonderful's like, where the fuck is Droft? Droft! And then Droft is over there by the wall. Apparently, he's by where the bodies of Harbred's men are. And when Craw gets there, he sees that Droft is going through their pockets, or one of them. Mm-hmm. And he's, getting some coins. And Craw's like, you ever put that shit back? And then Droft is like, I was going to share it. There's no good to him now. It's not yours. Leave it with Harbred, and when Harbred has, the guy, and when Harbred comes back, he'll decide who gets it. And then Jan is like, more than likely it'll be Harbred who gets it, and who cares? There's a right way of doing things. And then Scory, at some point, a couple of people are like, whatever, and then Scory says, no one thinks that way, Chief. Go ahead.
I mean, it is faintly ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, you've already killed them. So what does it matter that you're going to take their money now?
Yeah. It's an honor thing, I guess.
I know, but it's not like you killed them for their money. That would be something different.
Right. But then Brack points out, like, look how rich some goofball like Sup Brittles made himself, and then Jan's like, yeah, well, we're scraping by, and then Crawl goes, look, that's what you're due, and I'll see you get a guild for yesterday's work, but you'll leave the bodies be. You want to be Sup Brittle? You can go beg a place with Glamour Golden's lot and rob folk all day long. He's like prickly this today. And he's let it pass.
Like, I lost one of my boys. I'm not fucking around.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's let it pass before. He helped himself more than once when he was younger. Even Three Trees used to overlook his boys picking a course or two. But he chosen to stand on it, and now he can't back down. He's like, what are we? Named men or pickers and thieves? And Jan's like, poor is what we are. And then Wonderful was, what the fuck? When you're Chief Jolly Young Cumber, you could do it your way. Till then, we do it Crawls. We're named men, or I am at least. I ain't convinced about the rest of you. So there's like tension here, I guess, over Crawl's determination to do things the right way. And then Weiren comes, we ain't in this for the coin. And then, walks away. And Jan is like, you might not be, but some of us wouldn't mind a little from time to time. But, whatever. And Wonderful talks to Craw and is like, sometimes she goes, I think the more that other people don't give a shit, the more you think you have to. And Craw's like, yeah, and? He's like, you can't make the world a certain way all on your own. And he says, there's a right way of doing things. And she's like, you sure that the right way isn't just trying to keep everyone happy and alive? And, she does have a point. And he goes, is that what we come to now? And whatever. And I like how he goes, that husband of yours should really teach you some respect. And she goes, that bitch, he's almost as scared as me as you lot. All right, boys, let's go. And then they just, they walk away. They leave the heroes. Then we get a bit of a break. and Craw is working his way down towards, I guess, where the Northmen are situated. He runs into fucking before he wait, actually, as they're walking, it's him and Shivers, and Craw kind of forgets that Shivers is with him, and is like muttering to himself like, "Fuck, it can't be right that you could be scared all the time." And Shivers is like, "Hey, what?" And then he asks Shivers like, "Do you ever get scared?" And Shivers goes, "I used to, all the time." What changed that was getting his eye burned out of his head. And I like how Craw goes so much for calming small talk. He goes, "Reckon that could change your outlook." And then Shivers goes, "Halves it."
Nice one.
Oh, it's funny. And then he sees somebody chilling on a stone slab, his hands behind his head and everything. And he's like, by the fucking dead, if it isn't the Prince of Nothing Much. And so it's Calder, and they start ragging on each other about, like, women's boots, you old shit, yada, yada. And then they just give each other a hug and stuff. And then Shivers is just like looking at them, and he's like, "You guys seem pretty tight." And then we learned that Craw was the one that practically raised this little bastard, fed him milk from squeezed cloth. Closest thing. And it's like, "Oh, okay, interesting." And they missed their talks, and they should get together. And so that's pretty cool. We see Craw and Calder have a history there, shared history. Then get to the place where Black Dow is. It's some kind of like ruin, and Splitfoot is in front of him. Dow is second, and he goes, "Dow wants you in there," and then Crawl goes, "Okay, do you want my sword?" And Splitfoot says no, and he was like, "What? When did Black Dow start trusting people?" I guess it might have been either normal procedure for Black Dow, or maybe just in general for you're the King of the North, Protector of the North, whatever, that you be unarmed. But didn't Dow trust Craw? Interesting. But Craw wasn't sure if that was a good sign. And then Shivers made to follow, but Splitfoot is like, no, Dow didn't ask for you. And Shivers obviously didn't seem to like that very much, but Craw ducks in, goes in there. And Dow is sitting in Scarling's chair. So, George, you are correct. They are just hauling that fucking thing everywhere.
I wonder who's hauling it. You know what I mean?
I bet Splitfoot.
It's got to be like the lowest of the low. Like you join up with the army and you've got like one arm or something. Like, right, you're carrying the chair.
I could totally see Dow like, "I got a job for you, boy." And then he walk up, you're like, "You mean it, Black Dow?" And he's like, "You're carrying my chair."
Yay! I bet he has to carry the chair while Dow's still sitting in it.
That's funny. It's funny, we don't really see Dow very often, and for a little while until he's outside of the chair.
No, very true. Very true. And so when he gets there, Dow is talking to Call Ricci. And so he's telling him that when he gives the word, you'll go off alone, move on to Ostrong with everything you've got. They're weak there. And he goes, "How do you know that?" And Dow kind of goes, "I got my ways. They've got too many men and not enough road, and they rush to get here, so they're stretched out thin. Just some horsemen in the town and a few of the Dogman's people. They might have gotten some infantry up by the time they get there, but not enough to stop you if you take a proper swing." So then he wants Ricci to, lead off, and he wants Ricci to carry his standard, nice and clear up at the front, and Golden's and Ironhead's and yours, where everyone can see, make them think it's their big effort. So they'll probably pull some men off the heroes with any luck, and then leave the stones weaker held. And so once they're in the open fields, between the hill and the town, he's going to let Golden's men, loose to tear their masses out. And then him, Dow, Ironhead, and 10 Waves will make a proper effort on the heroes. So
it's a good plan. It's like Dow definitely thought it through. They don't have the numbers that the Union has, and the Union doesn't have that many numbers up on there, so they have to optimize as much surprise and the numbers advantage while they can, and take back all the high ground. But it's clever for them to have given it up first. That way they're caught off guard. It's pretty smart.
Yep, it is. And he says that they've been going around the sides of the Union for months. The Union's not gonna expect the Northmen to actually attack them front on. So he says if we break them at the heroes, then we break them here, and talk about their heart. And then Golden can follow up, chase them right down to the fords, all the way down to Adween. Scale should be ready on their right by then anyway, and can take the old bridge. So by the time that he's in Osrung, when the rest of the Union turn up tomorrow, all the best ground will be the Norse. And so great. And so Ricci turns to leave. And he goes, holy shit, Kerndon Crawl. Oh, my God. And
you son of a bitch.
Yeah, how you doing? How's the knee? It's a little sore. How about everything? He's like, how's Jan Cumber? He's like, always with the joke. How's Flood? They're shooting the shit. It seems like they like each other. It's all good and everything. So Ricci leaves, and then now it's just Crawl and Dow. And, Crawl's like, all right, hey, Chief, hey. And then Dow takes a deep breath, and he's like, didn't I tell you to hold on to that fucking hill? Really loud. And Craw is like, oh, fuck. And he goes, well, I was holding on to it all right until the Union showed up. And then Dow gets closer, and Dow, he leans forward, and he raises a hand and puts it gently on Craw's shoulder. And he goes, sorry about this. I have a reputation to look up to. And then Crowell's like, oh, thank God. And he's like, yeah, of course. Let her rip, Chief. And then he goes, and then Dow goes, and he's like, you're useless, old fuck. And then he whispers, he goes, you made a fight of it then? And he's like, yeah, with Hardbread. And he's, oh, I remember that old bastard. How many did he have? 22. And Dow goes, what? Against you and what, 10? And he goes, yeah, with Shivers. And he goes, yeah, you saw them off. So I guess Dow has to yell at the top of his lungs to make it seem like he's tearing Craw a new one. But really, he likes Craw. I like this dynamic. And
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And Dow kind of snaps, not at Craw, but he says that he wished he'd been there. Wish he'd been there and fucking fighting instead of just talking. But then he's asked him if he saw the Union come up. And then he goes, yeah, 1,000 on the road to Adwayne. Got the feeling there were more behind. And Dow goes, yeah, Jallenhorn's division. And so Craw goes, how do you know that? And now this time we hear a voice that goes, he has his ways. Craw nearly shits himself. There's a woman lying on one of the highest walls of the ruin. And Dow doesn't even look up. He goes, yeah, a friend of mine. And he goes, well, when I say friend, she goes, enemy's enemy. I am Ishri.
Oh, Ishri's back.
Yep, and so she had rolled off the back of the wall, like behind, out of his eyesight. He expected to hear like her feet hitting the ground or something. Didn't hear that, but when she says I'm Ishri, she says it right behind him in his ear. So now he basically fell. He's like, oh, what the fuck? And we know Ishri. We saw her in Better Call. We love her. She's known as the East Wind. She's the baddest bitch around. Love her.
She's
great.
Pretty awesome.
And then Dow's laughing, and he goes, you never could tell when she's gonna spring out of. He's always worried that she's gonna pop out of nowhere while he's, wanking it. And I like how Ishri's like, you wish. And so then Craw's like, where did you come from? And then she goes, south. Or did you mean, why did I come? And he goes, uh-huh. And she goes, to do the right thing, to fight against evil. Or do you mean who sent me? He goes, sure. And he goes, God. And how could it be otherwise? God puts us all where he wants us. And Craw's like, Jesus Christ, got a shitty sense of humor, doesn't he? And she goes, you don't know the half of it. I came to fight against the Union. Is that enough? And so Dow's like, yep, it's enough for me at least. And so she tells Dow that they're moving onto the hill in numbers. It's Jallenhorns that she believes. And then she goes, you fat pink men all look the same to me. He's like, okay, racist. And then he asks her about Miderick. She says, some way behind, chomping at the bit, furious that Jallenhorn is in his way. And then he goes, what about Mead? And she goes, where's the fun in knowing everything? God must be so bored. To it, my heroes. Now, here at this point, she's walking to a wall where there's a very small crack in the wall. this crack, a cat can't fit in here. And yet she's able to wiggle a foot in, then her leg, then to her hip. She basically just disappears into this little fucking crack.
Yeah, she like slowly crawls inside this tiny crack in the wall, and all that's left is it's like a twig, and he like reaches out and grabs it, and it's like it's just a twig.
Because at first it was just her finger, but then when Dao walks over it, it actually was just a twig, and it's like, what the fuck? And Crawl's like, magic. I can't say I care for it. He's like, why do they have to act so bloody strange? And Dao goes, it's a war. I care for whatever gets the job done. But he tells him, good idea not to mention my black-skinned friend to anyone else, though. Folks might get the wrong idea. And then Crawl goes, well, what's the right idea? And Dao, he's not kidding at this point. He goes, whatever I fucking say it is. And Crawl's, hey, you're the chief, all right. And then he's, damn right, I'm the chief. And Crawl's like noticing, like, wait a minute. It looks like he was trying to convince himself. And then he wondered, like, if Black Dao ever felt like a fraud, whether his courage ever needed stitching together. And he didn't like that thought much, But then he goes, so we're fighting then? And Dao looks at him, and the famous Black Dao killing smile broke out. And he goes, oh, yeah, high fucking time. And he heard everything that he was telling Ricci, that he's going to try to drive them off towards Ostrong. Then Dao will go straight at the heroes. And he goes straight at him, the way Three Trees would have done it, eh? And Crawl goes, would he? And Dao goes, what does it matter? 3 trees is 7 winters in the mud. I have another timestamp right here. That's before they're hanged. So Crawl asks him where does he want him and his dozen? And he goes, he wants him right beside Dao when he charges up the heroes, of course. And I like how he goes, I expect there's nothing in the world you like more than to take that hill back from those Union bastards. And Crawl's like, oh yeah, it's at the very top of my list. And that's the end of that chapter. Boys, how do you rate it?
It's kind of a weird one to rate, isn't it?
It is.
I think I'm gonna rate it a 5 out of 9 because it's setting it up. And not that it's not doing anything wrong or bad or anything like that. It's just kind of setting it up. But like we get like this cool dynamic. We see, Ishri pop up again, which is pretty cool. Adding to the feeling that there's a lot of characters in here from the other books and how important everything is happening. I like how they have their plan set up and how we see these connections being made between Craw and the other people in the north. He's not just some northern named man. Like he's got a reputation, and that builds up really well with everything. But it's also like, it had to happen, but I don't know. It's kind of an average chapter.
Yeah
I feel the same way. I feel like you get a lot more of that Crawls does, and get a little bit of a look into Black Dale's psyche a little bit as well, which is good.
Yeah,
we get a lot more of that later, but like you said, Sir Harrison, perfectly average chapter.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a little bit more than a 4 and a knuckle. I'll give it a 5, just because there's a little bit of plot advancement here, which is where we see the battle plan being drawn up and we see what's gonna happen, right? Other than that, what we get Craw, and we get insight into Craw and Calder's relationship, and we actually get insight into Craw and Dao's relationship. And I wonder if Craw and Dao have extensive history, right? Or if it's more based on like mutual acquaintances and like by reputation. Like Dao knows Craw as a straight edge. Craw knows Dao as, the violent psycho, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
it's probably a little mixture of both. Like I'm sure they've met before, but
they definitely have. Because he knows him by sight. Dao knew him by sight, So for sure. And he knows that he was with 3 trees. They've had to have had some interaction in the past. We see how like there's supposed to be some words spoken at Athrok's burial, but the reality of life is sometimes shit just gets cut short. Life and words. So Agric is obviously upset about this. We see little bits of Jolly Yon and some other the guys kind of being like, "Where's the money?" He's like, "Well, what the fuck, man? We're not all on the same page. It seems like by doing the right thing." Anyway, but it's an average chapter, so I'll give it a 5 out of 9 fingers. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty, so we'll move on to our final segment, which is community interaction. Boys, what do we have?
Well, it's kind of going down some stuff from the Reddit. It's been pretty active lately, and obviously we can only view, but
we can only view thanks to a certain somebody.
We got there's a lot of people like reading and like rereading the stuff, and they're talking about different different things they liked, or things that they didn't notice before. And so it's kind of cool to see that everyone's active right now. I'm not really sure why. I mean, it's just that time of year where we're getting back into holidays. People are staying in or catching up and starting to get nostalgic. There's a couple fun ones that I want to point out. Somebody said Sand as a first name. That title by itself, like Sandan Glocta, is pretty. Yeah, buddy. You're not the only one. We all know that Sand is definitely not a great first name. That's why we all just call him Glocta. It's pretty funny because the guy's like, "Is this right? Is Sand the correct name?" Yes, it is. Sand is his first name.
Somebody points out in that thread that's not weird for a fantasy name. There's plenty of fucking very strange names in these books. So
that's probably the least. At least it like flows off the tongue, right? Sandan Glocta. It like flows off the tongue.
I like it.
Yeah, you do wonder what his mother was thinking. Somebody talked about how they're kind of put off about how Therese was written. I always feel conflicted about this. Like, even I pointed out how Joe's, he does, and he's even said he writes women better the longer he writes. Therese is guilty of it to a certain degree. But I will say that, like, I think a lot of that was purposeful. And later on when we see her, she's still like very similar. She's just more mature. And, even though he does do a better job at writing, I think he also does a good job at not just changing the people he's already written. He's not like she's not a different person now. She's still similar to the way she was before. He's just in her head a little bit more and shows her to be more mature now. So, also, if people didn't know, but Stephen Pacey is going to be reading The Devils, which should make that read through pretty awesome.
Can't wait for that. That's going to be good stuff. I can't believe that's less than a year away now.
Yeah, it's not very far at all, dude. I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to hear what you guys think about it. It'll be like a, first time experience, like all of us reading at the same time, experiencing something pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
There's been quite a bit of interactivity of people talking about, like, how the Styrian armies, what they might have looked like. And we have another name one. Is it Ricky or Ricka? Well, I would say it's more of a Ricka.
Right.
But hence the it's the way that Pacey says it. It's kind of could go either way.
Everybody who reads the audiobooks has a bit of an advantage, don't they? It's, again, a really fucking nonsense name that doesn't, just say it how you want to say it. Doesn't matter.
We did get something unique here pop up as well. Somebody posted up here what the Styrians armies might have looked like. Apparently, it's kind of based off of, like Joe's, like how he describes the work and like kind of the time period, and so somebody's put together like a little illustrations of the different army groups, which is pretty cool. So like he's got like Battle of Sweet Pines, Battle of Osprey. He's got the timestamp on there, and he's got like the different armor types for each one, or like it's illustrated out as foot soldiers and things like that, which is pretty cool. They have the mercenaries, and they have crossbowmen, and the cavalrymen, and they have the armor that it was representative of the time, and that's pretty cool to contrast between that. And he's got another one here, what the armies of the North might have looked like, and they look way different, which is pretty cool to what it would have been. He's got the two different armies, like the Siege of Dumbreck, Thrall, Swordsman, Carl, Nameman, Archer, Thrall, Spearman, that kind of stuff. and they look good. They look like how they probably would have looked, or do look. And same thing for the Battle of Carleon down below that as well. If you guys take a look at that's pretty cool, actually. Kind of showing the evolution of how they would have changed over time, and the hillmen are kind of like Celtic soldiers, really carrying bare minimum. It's pretty cool. This guy is a Grand Strawberry 1015. He's definitely got some unique looking illustrations for the posts and things. He's also got one for the Gurkish army too. Holy shit, that's cool as fuck. Anyways, just jump on Reddit. There's a lot of cool stuff right now.
Yeah. Jump on our Discord too.
Yes, jump on, hop on.
So we got an email notification a couple days ago. Got a comment on Spotify from Danat saying more like Duke Rizgaunt. that was on a little bit of an older episode of 104. I think she's slowly working her way, is it Danat? It's the from the Discord, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. So yeah, continue to comment on our episodes too. We want some love.
Love us. We don't get enough.
If you want to join that Discord, go for it. Well, that's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you know, this is a passion project for the three of us, and your support really does mean a lot.
Join us next week as we cover The Very Model, Scale, Ours Not to Reason Why, and Cry Havoc
And make sure you follow us on all of our social media. And we have a website. It's circleoftheworld.com.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And please make sure to rate and review us. Thank you all again for listening.
Aren't you the hero?